The Sustainability Now Telesummit is honored to share audacious ideas and innovative solutions from more than 30 experts from around the globe. Learn how we can work together to shape a world that works. Here's your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome back to the Sustainability Now Telesummit, Shaping a World That Works. You are in for a treat to meet Reggie Nayar. Reggie spent 20 years gaining experience in sales, manufacturing, operations, logistics, purchasing, and sustainability at Frito Lay. And there he developed and led the Zero Landfill project. This project educated and supported several PepsiCo plants in contributing less than 1% of their entire waste to local landfills. In 4 years, he helped decrease the waste from 60 million pounds a year to less than 9.5 million pounds, with over 30 plants hitting under 1% of their waste going to the landfill. In recognition of his efforts, Reggie was the 2011 recipient of the PepsiCo Chairman's Award for his outstanding contribution to the company. In 2011, Reggie founded Innovative Waste Solutions to help companies minimize waste. His years of experience have helped shape his unique ability to understand production, comprehend bottom lines, strategize processes, streamline energy, and develop teamwork to benefit companies, its employees, and the planet itself. Reggie, welcome. We're really glad to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, you're doing a phenomenal thing for the planet. You know, we're all talking about what we can do to make a difference. And here you are working on a manufacturing level where the volumes of waste are almost incomprehensible. I mean, the numbers from 60 million pounds of waste a year, I mean, even decreased to 9.5 million pounds of waste a year is staggering.
Yeah, manufacturing produces so many products for the consumer, and there's no way to make products without having waste. So a while back, I decided, hey, let's start a company that can help all the manufacturing plants are all around the country, because they need some guidance, I would say, and some expertise. Because when you're making milk or Coke or Pepsi products, that's what your expertise is. You're making product for the consumer. Your expertise is not in how to reduce waste going to landfill. So
Right.
We started the company to actually just be helping large food and beverage companies so that we were the experts in how to reduce landfill and give them ideas out of the box.
And, you know, it occurs to me that because you're expert in these processes and you're having the exposure to all these different production streams, that you probably can use your knowledge of the waste stream to inform actual manufacturing processes.
We've actually done that several times. We've walked into plants and seen one company doing X, another company doing Y. Process Y is not very efficient. So we say, hey, we saw this process X at another company. Do you want to try that? So we'd like to share best practices. As we walk into manufacturing locations, we'll see things that are going great, and we'll share those great processes with our next client or some other client that may want to do the same thing. So we've seen things where people are wasting 1 pound or 2 pounds of materials out of a 50-pound bag because they don't know how to cut the bag properly.
Wow.
So we'll teach them, cut the bag this way, and you'll get a better yield on your materials, and you'll be able to save that 1 pound or 2 pounds of materials that would have gone to the landfill and actually use it in your cooking process, in your manufacturing process. And now you're making more cookies or more chips or more whatever you're making.
So that kind of gets to one of the primary motivations that these larger companies are having to consider zero waste. It's not necessarily driven by concern for the planet, but it can be stimulated by concern for the bottom line, right?
It's always about the bottom line, Mara. If somebody says to you, hey, let's save the planet, people will go, yeah, sure, whatever. But if I say to you, let's save the planet and let me help you make millions of dollars doing that, I get a better response.
I I understand that you would.
And with us, usually what happens is we find alternative solutions that actually save the company money or make them incremental revenue. So usually, well, I can't say always, but usually 99% of the time, our company will find processes that will help the client to save expenses. I'll give you an example. Just last week, we were at a alcohol facility, and we looked at their waste bill, and we saw they were spending $60,000 a year on their waste. We came back and said, let's modify these two behaviors and processes, and we'll save you $25,000 a year.
Wow.
And it worked. It was
That's-
fantastic. It worked. They were able to minimize the amount going to landfill. They were able to minimize the number of transactions with the waste hauler as well. So we helped them with some logistics, and we helped them with some process improvements, and they were able to cut their waste cost by 50%.
Wow. So, there have been some changes, recent changes that are really impacting the way we, as a country in the US particularly, have to look at waste. Whereas China's just said, no, we're not going to take any more waste from you guys. So here, you keep your problem. And all of a sudden, the US is having to contend with the waste that we generate. What kinds of changes are you seeing as a result of that policy change?
So about 12, 18 months ago, China put into place a new law where they were minimizing the amount of recyclable materials they were taking. The reason they did this was because the material was contaminated. So it wasn't 100% cardboard or 100% one particular plastic. What we were sending them from the US was materials that had 5 to 10% contamination. And what would happen is China was getting a lot of the trash that nobody wanted. And so they said, hey, we can't be the world's garbage company. And they cut off the US, they cut off the international market. And what's happened over the last 18 months, the US is material supply has increased. So we used this, one of our largest exporting items was cardboard, OCC fiber. And now we can't give that away at the moment because China is not taking it. And the price of that raw material has gone down by 60, 70, 80% compared to where it was 18 to 24 months ago. And it's causing us in the US to figure out new ways to use this material. We have a huge supply of materials, and now we're trying to figure out how do we use that supply because it's reasonably inexpensive. How do we use it internally within the US, North America, and create products for our country, for us, because we have it here. We don't have to go outside of North America to get these raw materials. So we're looking to find companies that are now going to generate new ways of using cardboard, new ways of using plastics, and it doesn't have to go overseas.
So I just have to make a segue because we have another speaker on this summit that folks will want to check out, and that's Jay Potter from Ecor, and they are taking corrugated cardboard and other kinds of cellulose-based materials, and they're using them to make building materials and furniture and all kinds of other things. And then just to circle back to what you were saying about the cost of the corrugated cardboard going down, on the surface, we would look at that and say, well, that's a good thing, right?
Right.
But it's not such a good thing if the recyclers of this material aren't able to sell it and make a profit, right?
That's exactly right. So to handle and move corrugate via a plant, like a recycling plant, that cost is anywhere from $30 to $60 a ton. To put it in perspective, the corrugate market, today's corrugate market on May the 10th, 2019, is below that. In the Texas market, you can sell bales of cardboard for $40 a ton. In San Diego, you can sell cardboard at $25 a ton. In Chicago, it's $30 a ton. So if the cost of processing is $30 to $60, but the value of the material is only $30 or $40, it makes it very challenging for the recycler to actually make a profit.
And so then what happens to that corrugate?
So that corrugate is sitting in warehouses or is not getting processed. The other option is, and this is probably going to happen in the next few weeks, the recycler is going to go back to the cities or the consumers or manufacturing and say, if you want me to take your corrugate materials, you need to pay me to take this material because it costs me so much money to process and I can't sell it. So if it's going to cost me $50 to process and I could sell it for $40, I'm minus $10. So therefore, I'm going to charge you $20 so I can make some type of profit. That's going to happen in the near term.
Okay. Okay, that's great because it gives us a better, I mean, it's not great that that's happening. It's great that you explained it so that we have a perspective about how it works in the cycle.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is going to be an issue for cities because let's pretend a city's sending all their materials to a recycler. 3 years ago, that city was probably making $2, $3, $4, $5 million from the recycling materials. Okay. And that money was going back to the city so the city could build roads or pay their workers or however they wanted to use that money. In the future, they're not making that $2, $3, $4, $5 million. And so it's going to be a shortfall for cities. Just like it is a shortfall for recyclers, it's going to be a shortfall for the city. So we could see that the city comes back to us as consumers and say, you know, that recycling, we were charging you $15 or $20 for your bin. Well, we have to change that because now we have to pay the recycler and we still have the $2 or $3 million shortfall. So your recycling bin could double or triple in cost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's
maybe municipalities will get into producing materials sort of like the e-core material or something like that. So that, I mean, what you're really pointing out is the necessity to revisit our manufacturing processes, our use of materials, and it kind of moves us into a conversation around circular economy.
It really does. It really does.
So why don't you just give people a foundation idea of what in the world, what is this circular economy they might be hearing more and more about?
Well, I would say, so circular economy is where we're going to take materials and bring it back all the way around. In other words, so let's say we manufacture milk and we put it in a bottle, okay? And that bottle, you may remember 40 or 50 or 60 years ago, there used to be a milkman that used to come to the door and drop off a few bottles of milk. And then the next day, he or she may come back and pick up that milk bottle, but also deliver some milk to you. So the circular economy is taking that bottle, bringing it back, having it cleaned out, and then reusing it back for that same purpose. And we see that coming in the future. Now, there are companies that are on the brink of.
I think that model is coming back into play. It has to. It has to.
It does. We are limited on the number of resources we have. And if we keep doing what we're doing, we'll have a lot more holes in the ground with nothing there but trash.
And actually, you have a presentation that talks of, so let's jump into your presentation. Your presentation is something that we're going to share with folks that purchase the Premium Summit package. So you've got some reference material in there. But really what we're doing through your presentation is we're sharing a lot more of the backstory around waste, right?
That's exactly right. Let me walk you through a couple of slides, actually only about 7 slides here.
Okie doke. And do you want to shall we continue conversation as we bring up these slides?
Yeah, if you're okay with that, let's keep talking about it. So what is solid waste? And there's several definitions, but I'm going to take the one for municipal solid waste, okay? What that means is it includes durable goods, non-durable goods, containers, packaging, food waste, yard trimmings, and a bunch of other inorganic waste, okay? Cool. Now, waste didn't happen in nature. If we look back 50 years, 100 years, there was no waste. You know, when people had armies in the 1500s and 1600s and 1700s, they didn't say, hey, where am I going to take my trash? Where's the landfill? that never came up in conversation. It's only been over the last 50, 100 years that we've said, oh, we need to take this material and go put it in a landfill.
And so another thing that people are talking about, they're talking about circular economy, they're talking about biomimicry. And biomimicry is talking about nature. So you're right, waste doesn't occur in nature. When something dies, it becomes food for something else.
That's
Or
exactly.
or the foundation of something else. And that's what we need to be looking at. And so this whole conversation really is talking a lot about how we need to rethink and redefine our whole manufacturing process over the past number of years, driven by sort of capitalist growth kind of idea. Products have been manufactured with built-in obsolescence, right?
Unfortunately, that is correct. So we as a economy, as consumers, have said a one-time water bottle is okay, right?
Up until now.
For
Finally, hopefully we're saying something else at this point, but yes, absolutely.
I think we are. So a lot of people think one-time use of a plastic bottle is fine. I don't agree with that. I think there is a higher use for a water bottle. In other words, can we have a repurposed water bottle that people walk around with, and if they need water, they go to a water fountain, they fill it up. They've got a filter in that water bottle, and you aren't wasting plastic bottles over and over and over again.
Exactly.
And I would say, reading through these slides, the waste problem is getting worse. So we, as human beings, have to figure out a new or better way of using our resources. So a reusable water bottle with a filter is a great solution to having plastic water bottle one-time use.
And in fact, there's somebody else on the summit who's going to be talking about just that thing. So,
Really? That's
yeah,
fantastic.
that's Heshi Siegel. So folks, you want to check her out too.
Well,
Oh,
I'm definitely going to check her out. That's
cool.
awesome.
Cool.
All right, so let's talk about municipal solid waste. So most consumers, most people that live in any county produce municipal solid waste. And we've talked about plastic bottles. A lot of people are talking about the plastic issues in the oceans. A lot of people are talking about plastic as being the #1 generated item as far as materials that are going to landfill. But if you look at this slide, you'll see that paper and paperboard, which would be cardboard boxes, pizza boxes, tissue boxes, that kind of stuff is considered paper and paperboard. And it's almost 30% of all our waste going to landfill.
That's extraordinary.
The next one is food scrap. So, you know, you cook dinner, you have whatever you had for dinner, and you throw away the scraps. That accounts for almost 15%. So there's a significant amount of other materials that's going to landfill outside of plastic. There's wood,
Right.
yard trimming, so on and so forth.
Right.
And
I think one of the concerns about the plastic is that it doesn't degrade. Whereas the paper will over time. We don't want to be putting it in landfill, but it will degrade, right?
that's correct. That's
Whereas
correct.
the plastic does not. But
That's correct.
this is really shocking. I had no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people think that plastic is the #1 issue, but I would tell you that from a volume standpoint, there's 2 or 3 other items just as important or more volume than plastics. Now, well, my next slide is going to be on plastics, and let me walk you through plastics a little bit.
Okay.
There's a lot of different plastics, and the issue that we have with plastics is it gets mixed up. Okay, and what I mean by that is there's 7 different plastics, and I'll walk you through what each one is. So
Okay.
there's PET, polyethylene. Okay, this is your soda bottle, your water bottle. HDPE, this is your milk jug. PVC would be on your windows. LDPE would be stretch film. Let's say you had a box and it was wrapped around with stretch film to make sure, or the bubble wrap that was in that box, that would be LDPE, also known as low density polyethylene. Polypropylene is a super sack, or could be various other things in the manufacturing process. Polystyrene, which is number 6, could be a styrofoam cup, or it could be if you go to a furniture store and you're buying a bed, you've got all this white foam all around it. That could be polystyrene. Also, if you've got a white cooler and you're going to the beach and you're going to put some ice in it and some beer and soda, that could also be a polystyrene. The last one, 7, there's various other plastics, and they just name it as a number 7. I'm going to go back to my manufacturing roots for a second, Mark. In a manufacturing plant, there are several plastics that are generated, and that's because raw materials are coming in to manufacturing for processing into finished goods for the consumer. And it usually comes as PET or HDPE or LDPE. And all those commodities are pretty valuable. And if a manufacturer does the right thing, they can generate revenue for all 3 of those streams, as long as they don't mix it. And that's my key second bullet point. You have to keep the plastics separated to generate value. If you mix the plastics, if you mix HD plastic with LD plastic and you try to recycle it and convert it back into resin or plastic pellets, what will happen is one of the plastics will melt and the other won't, which will cause issues. So when they go through the recycling process, some of it will be hard and others will be melted, and you can't convert it back into pellets or resin that can now be used into another plastic bottle. So that's why mixed plastics is very, very difficult to recycle. And when we are consumers, we tend to think all plastics are created equal, and they're not.
Okay.
Let me walk you through how materials are recycled. I think that this may be interesting, and I'll pause it so we can talk a little bit too halfway through.
Sounds good.
Welcome to the Sunoco Recycling MRF located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Come inside and take a tour with us. A MRF is a sorting facility called a material recovery facility. All recyclables from your house, school, or business comes to one of these facilities. At Sunoco, they take our used paper, cardboard boxes, plastic bottles and containers, glass bottles and jars, and metal food and drink cans. Remember, never leave anything sticky and gooey on the inside of the containers. It leaves a big mess. This facility uses a lot of mechanical equipment to help them sort out each kind of material so it can go to a factory and be made into something new. Workers stand beside the conveyor belts to help sort out certain materials and remove things that may be dangerous to them or to the machinery. Uh-oh, looks like someone tried to recycle a green garden hose. Remember, not everything is recyclable. Never put ropes, hoses, clothing, or anything that can get tangled up in your recycling bin. One of the first steps to sorting at Sunoco is to remove all glass. A machine called a glass breaker shakes the material against sharp metal blades so that tiny pieces of glass fall through tiny holes in the screen and are moved to an outside collection area. Did you notice the white stuff that came out of the chute? That's shredded paper and it's hard to contain. Check with your local town or city first to find out if it's accepted and how to prepare it. Next is the removal of all the different types of paper. Cardboard is separated first because boxes are so big. Then, the paper sorter has wheels that spin and grip the pieces of paper, kind of like a sticky lint roller. Anything that's not flat, like paper, will continue on down the line. Next is the separation of plastics, which can be tricky. A machine with a laser scanner can detect if a bottle is a certain type of plastic and send it to the right bin. But the machine is not perfect, so workers help look for plastics like milk jugs, water and soda bottles, and colorful laundry soap containers. The one type of plastic they don't want is our plastic grocery bags. These bags get tangled and wrap around the paper sorting wheels, which can damage the machines. It's important to never bag your recyclables. Remember, you can take the empty bags back to a grocery store to be recycled. Once the plastics are removed from the conveyor belt, the final sorting step removes all the metals. Did you know that there are 2 different kinds of metals in the stuff we use? The first one is steel metal, which most of our soup and vegetable cans are made out of. A strong, powerful magnet picks them up and releases the cans into a very large bin. The second kind of metal is aluminum, which our drink cans are made out of. Aluminum is not attracted to magnets, so an eddy current machine uses electricity across the top of the conveyor belt to find and separate the drink cans. See how the cans jump and fly into the bin? Now that everything is sorted by its type, they can bundle the material together in a machine called a baler, which makes a 1-ton rectangular bale. Here comes one now.
I just wanted to stop it here for a second to show you that this is how recycling occurs at not only a material recovery facility, but also in industry. So a lot of the food manufacturing plants that I work with have this type of equipment on site. And so they'll take, and this happens to be milk bottles. If this was a milk plant, they would take all their milk bottles that had fallen on the ground or had bad milk whatsoever and put it through this process and send these by truckload or by rail to the recycler or to the end user.
That's wild. They're 1-ton bales?
Yeah, they weigh in this particular case, they weigh 2,000 pounds, but depending on the type of baler you have, you could have a little bit less. A small vertical baler will be a 60-inch vertical bale that weighs 800 to 1,000 pounds. This is a horizontal baler, and it's got a dual ram, so it is able to compress even further, and that's why it's about a 2,000-pound bale.
Wow. And then this goes to the recycler, and what happens then?
So the recycler, this is actually the recycler because they're recycling here. What they'll do is they'll capture 20 of these bales to get 40,000 pounds and put it on a semi-truck and send it to a user that will convert it into plastic pellets. So they'll go through a melting process and extrusion process and convert it back into little pellets. Those little pellets will be sold back to the manufacturer of milk bottles or Tide bottles or some kind of soap bottles, and they'll take that plus the virgin resin and blow mold the bottles that we will use again. So they'll take this and turn it back into bottles.
And why do they have to add virgin resin? Why can't they just use the pellets?
Because there's not enough strength in those pellets. They have to mix it with the virgin to make sure the product's still good.
Okay.
It's not, you can't try 100% recycled material because you'll have issues with the bottles because they won't form exactly the way you want them to form.
Okay. And so how many times can you recycle plastic?
It will keep going over and over again because it's being mixed with virgin material anyways. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to have 100% recycled material. What happens is during the pelletizing process, some of this gets melted off. So you may take 100 pounds of plastics and put it through the process, and you only get a 60 or 70% yield on it. And depending on if there's a lot of labels or other items attached to the bottle, you may get even a lower yield of 30 to 40%. So you can take 100 pounds of plastic, but it's got caps and it's got paper and it's got other contaminants, and it only yield 30 or 40% of plastic resin.
How did they separate those contaminants out?
So for plastics, they actually go through a melting process. So paper will actually just burn off.
Okay.
That's one way. Dirt and other items will fall apart, and they also go through a wash step. So if there's other items attached to that plastic, it'll get washed with sprayers and other materials.
And do you happen?
Before it goes into the extrusion process.
It just occurs to me, what would happen to the wastewater from that wash process? Are there any provisions for that?
They have to get it treated before it gets back into the city water. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's something.
We have to throw some chemicals at it to make it work.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. That's a different topic.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? So much of this stuff is invisible to the public. It's kind of like, with big agribusiness, we don't see what's behind the scenes and how the animals are treated. We just go and buy our packaged meat in the grocery store. And I think that that's the case with this too, as like by becoming aware, you can't unsee this stuff. which is
No.
a good thing. You know, it's like, okay, now you can't pretend that you don't know.
Right. Right.
And hopefully that'll help shape our behaviors and our purchasing choices as well.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, the volume is incomprehensible. And I think when we actually are confronted with it, it's like, oh, okay, I need to do something. I need to do something now.
We definitely as people need to push back on our companies. We need to hold our consumer product companies to a higher standard to make sure that they're not throwing materials in landfill.
And
We
our
as,
legislators, I think that we
yeah,
also need to be requesting and requiring and demanding mandates against plastic like
yeah.
this.
And you know, some of the larger corporations like the Walmarts of the world are holding their suppliers accountable. And I think that's a good thing.
I think that's a really good thing. So just let me say again that you're making this PowerPoint available, and for each of these different types of plastics that are listed here, that they're linked to videos to give further explanation so people can have a richer understanding of exactly what is going on behind the scenes when it comes to plastics.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, this was actually, you talked about this a little bit when you introduced me. This is the key metrics that we used when I was working at Frito Lay. We, you know, in 2007 had 60 million pounds of waste go to landfill. And that waste included food waste, plastics, corrugate, metals, all types of materials. And by 2012, we had reduced it under 10 million pounds, taken about 85% of the waste that was going to landfill and taking it out of the landfill. And in doing so, the company made about $6 million annually.
Wow.
So when I sold the project, it wasn't because I wanted to be green. It wasn't because I wanted to do the right thing. The way I had to sell the project was there's money to be made as a company and it will impact our bottom line. And for most manufacturing locations, companies, that's the real key metric is how does it help my bottom line?
Right.
And I would tell you that managing waste at production facilities will help the bottom line. Because right now, I would say 80% of the manufacturers are spending way too much money on their trash bill, and they're not generating any revenue on their recycling. 80% is what I would guess.
That's a huge statistic. You know, I think it would be helpful to give us an idea of how, for instance, some of the strategies that you implemented in order to achieve that reduction and to generate revenues. And one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is because as we move into a green economy, as we grow into a more sustainable structure, hopefully socially and in business, I just want to point out that there's huge business opportunities in waste.
There are really huge opportunities in waste. So let me walk you through a little bit more details on how we got these numbers. So
Awesome.
in 2007, I had an idea and I pitched it and I got the okay from senior management to try it. And the first thing they said is, "Are you sure there's something there?" And I said, "Yeah, there's something there. I just don't know enough about it to validate what I think. So let me model it. Let me try 4 facilities, okay? Let me try one on the East Coast. Let me try one in the Midwest. Let me try one in the Southwest. And let me try one on the West Coast." So they're all different. They make different products. And we started in 2008 with these 4 model facilities. And within a year, we got 2 of them to less than 1% to landfill.
Wow.
Right?
In how many and how long?
In less than 12 months.
That's extraordinary.
These guys wanted to do something. So the people at these two of the 4 facilities said, "Tell me what to change. Tell me how to change. Tell me what I need to do differently to get to zero landfill." And so we worked hand in hand together because I was learning at the same time as they were. We just knew there was a good idea. We just didn't know how to execute. So we used the 4 facilities to learn. And the 2 that got it completed in 12 months showed us that it was all about engagement of the people within that facility. So we had to get not 7 out of 10 people, we had to get 10 out of 10 people, because even if one person didn't want to do the right thing, they could mess up, because they could be the person that was putting everything in the trash bin. So we had to get, there was 380 people at one facility, 600 people at another facility. We rolled out meetings to them. We showed them what we wanted to do. We told them why we wanted to do, and we told them what was in it for them and for the environment. And everybody either grabbed their arms and gave us hugs and said, okay, we're on board, or they didn't. That's why 2 of the 4 worked. All right. So you could say 2 were awesome and 2 needed a different nudge. The 2 that didn't do it, we came back in 2009 and we helped them get there as well. It just took a little bit longer. They didn't realize why it was important. They didn't realize why they had to do the things that we asked for. But in 2009, they got on board. So depending on the facility, it may take a few months, but it could take a little bit longer for others to get engaged.
Well, actually, you are speaking something that's so, so, so critical. First of all, you talked about engagement. And what you're doing is you're creating a paradigm shift in the culture. You're saying, hey, everybody, this is something we can do together. It's mission-based. Let's all get on board and do this thing that's going to make a difference. And you've proven that through that engagement, you can get in compliance and create a profound result in the space of 12 months. So to me, that is such a hopeful message. 12 months to get to 0 waste in a manufacturing facility. I would have thought
it was hard work. It was hard work. It wasn't easy. I mean,
but you've created a model, and you also created a social model for it, and how to generate and engage people. Well, generate that level of engagement. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that was definitely the key. It was the engagement.
That's a big social experiment.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun.
So how did you do that? You said you had meetings.
Oh, we had meetings. We had involvement with the team. We had a kickoff. We provided them with breakfast on the kickoff. And then when we finally executed, then we celebrated and had a grill out and had steaks for everybody. So it was a encompassing engagement, because we wanted to make sure everybody was on board and we treated them properly. We took their feedback and leveraged their feedback to make a better program. And
Wow.
Things happened. We
Wow.
modified what we need to do within the facilities.
So how did you get the team the 2 facilities that weren't originally on board? How did you enroll them?
That was more of a challenge.
Okay.
We had to get, for one of them, we had to get senior leadership on board. We didn't realize we didn't have senior leadership on board. And so we had to have a conversation with senior leadership to say, are you wanting to be part of the solution or not? And so that was a come to Jesus type of a meeting with senior management. And then when they saw the vision, they came on board, and then the team from those facilities came on board as well.
Cool. So now you kind of have a playbook for the next facility that you want to implement something like this, yes?
That's right. That's right. So in 2009, we started the national rollout, and there was 42 plants, less the 4 that were already on board. And we started the national rollout then and continued into 2010, because it takes some time to do a rollout for these facilities. It's not you click a switch. You have to go to the facilities. You have to set up where all the bins are going to be located, what items are going to be recycled, who's going to do the recycling, who's going to take the materials after we've done all the separation. So there's a lot of effort that goes into on the back end of where the materials go, also how the materials are collected at the generation points. So that took us a couple of years in 2009, 2010, and then the results happened, into 2012.
Wow.
And I would tell you the key learning for me was that we have to find the right logistics for each specific plant. And that was the key, because you can't take materials and move them 500, 1,000 miles away. They have to stay local. You have to find local solutions for these problems. Even though Frito is a international company, what works in Texas doesn't necessarily work in San Diego or in Orlando.
So when you're talking about logistics and local, it keeps the cost down if it's local?
It keeps the cost down if it's local. And I would tell you that we as consumers have to do some of that as well. We need to buy local. We need to shop local, not have things coming from all over the world. You know, for instance, grapes coming from Chile. I love grapes, but if they're coming from Chile, is that really a good solution for me buying grapes? Or should I get them from somewhere in Texas, or should I get them from somewhere in California?
So just to go back around to logistics, yes, it's economical, and that's going to be the manufacturer's motivation for choosing local processors. But it's also really good for the planet that way, because we're using less fuels. And
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we need to stay local, both in an industry perspective and a consumer perspective.
Beautiful.
Okay, so next slide, very briefly. We are losing our landfills, which means we are actually filling them up. So over the course of a 20-year time frame from 1988 to 2009, we lost somewhere around 6,000 over 8,000 landfills because they were full, or they weren't doing the right thing and they got shut down. And the number keeps going down. So we as consumers better think of other ways of recycling, because there's not going to be more landfills coming open. That's not something that's happening. So we're having less and less landfills. We have to figure out what to do with our waste products. Okay.
And one of the big things we need to do is to stop producing waste products, for sure.
And that brings me to my next slide.
Yay.
It's almost like you knew what I was doing. So,
I'm psychic.
So landfill in this slide is actually disposal, okay, or trash. Step up from landfill is energy recovery. A lot of people, a lot of companies are now going to energy recovery facilities. So what they do is they take their materials, they send it off, and it gets burnt, and there is electricity produced. Energy recovery. I'm not 100% proponent of this solution, because as you look at it, yes, you get something back, but you're taking valuable resources and you're not converting them back to the same value. Okay. Now,
plus there's off-gassing, the gases that you have to deal with, toxins, right?
There's toxins, there's off gases, and it's not really a good solution. If you look at this pyramid, I would say that even recycling is not a good solution. Okay, so the three bottom pillars, or the three bottom bases, are what I would consider not really great solutions. Reuse. Let me give you an example of a reuse. Okay.
Okay, and just to help make a distinction between reuse and recycle.
So recycle is if you take a product and you break it back down to its original components and convert it back into another raw material product. So for instance, plastic bottles. You can take plastic bottles, break them down into pellets, and then build them back up into plastic bottles.
Okay.
That is recycling. A reuse would be, for instance, can you see this
yes.
super set that I have up? Okay, so yep. This is basically a bag. This bag can actually hold 3,000 pounds of material, okay? And a lot of companies get raw materials in this bag. So you may get, for instance, popcorn. Popcorn comes in these bags. It goes to a manufacturer. The manufacturer undoes this bag, and the popcorn goes in the kettle, and you have popcorn, and then you get a bag of popcorn. Now, if you wanted to buy this bag, it would cost you a lot of money from Uline or any other company that's selling this bag. What I'm suggesting is let's take that popcorn bag that a company had. They used it once. They had a plastic liner in it. It's not dirty. It's not bad. But let's take that super sack bag and take it to a cement company, excuse me, or to a gravel company or to a metal company and use it for intended purposes of a bag. It would save money for the generating company, the company that made the popcorn, okay? They won't have to get rid of it. They won't have to landfill it. It would be better for the company.
They can sell it, right?
They can sell it. They can make some money on it, and that's how you get the revenue from it. And they could sell it for half price to a company that wants to use it and put, let's say, rebarb in it, or sandstones, or gravel, or whatever item they want to put in it. They don't have to buy a brand new bag, right? Why spend all that money to buy a brand new bag when there's a perfectly good bag down the street that we can get for you? Beautiful. And that's what I mean by repurpose.
Reggie, are there any kind of co-ops for materials like this where manufacturers can say, here's our waste, let's put this together in one place, and then people can go and kind of buy it from that market, a co-op kind of thing?
I'm not aware of one. Mara. I know there's some other other companies that do repurpose and reuse materials. There's companies with websites that you can go on there and say, once used boxes, or once used super sacks, or once used totes. There are companies that do that, but I don't know of a particular co-op where manufacturers put items on there for.
That would be okay for you guys listening. That's a really good business opportunity.
That would be a great business opportunity. The food manufacturers could have a website and say, okay, I've got 100 bags of super sacks for sale at X price, and somebody else would purchase that. The manufacturer would make some money, and the end user would save some money.
Could even have it as an auction site or something.
Yeah.
Sure. So those entrepreneurs out there listening,
there's $1 million idea right there.
There you go.
All right, let me walk through the last couple of points on this pyramid. So,
do you want to put this back in slideshow view?
Yep. Sorry.
That's okay.
So we talked about trash disposal. We talked about burning or energy recovery. We talked about recycling, and I just mentioned super sack reuse. Minimization. Okay, this is interesting, and it goes to process improvements. I'll give you an example of a company that we helped a few years back. They were getting cocoa and sugar in 50-pound bags. Okay, these are paper bags, and they were cutting it right in the middle. So when they dumped their sugar or cocoa, what would happen is that the edges of each one of the bag sides would capture some of the materials. So a 50-pound bag would only yield 49 pounds of sugar or 49 pounds of cocoa. There was a pound being wasted and sent to the landfill. We went to them and said, why don't you cut the bag sideways, long ways, and there's no lip to capture any of the material.
Wow. And
so they changed their process. It was a little challenging at the beginning, but now they increased their yield, or they decreased their cost of raw materials by 2% because they were saving a pound for every 50-pound bag. And that's what I mean by minimization. Why order X more bags of product when it's still there? Okay. So one of the things that we as a company, IWS as a company, does is we go into manufacturing and we go through their process and we try to help them minimize their waste in that way. And that project saved them several millions of dollars because they bought millions and millions of dollars worth of raw materials to make their cookies and crackers.
It's so heartening to hear that such a small change can have such a huge impact.
It really can.
Yeah.
It really can. And the last top of the pyramid is prevention. Okay, so let's go back to the super sack example, where the manufacturer is getting popcorn in that super sack. It's getting 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. What would happen if we put it on a rail car and we put 40 or 100,000 pounds of kernels and have no bag at all, no super sack bag, no other kind of packaging material that comes with that. For instance, when you and I buy a bag of potatoes, there's a bag, right? When a manufacturer like a Frito Lay or some other chip manufacturer, their potatoes are not bagged. They come in full semi loads, they get dumped, and there's no packaging. So how do we do that for sugar, salt, oils, so on and so forth, where we don't have packaging?
Or
That
the
would be-
packaging that we have is something that we can just put back into use, that we can just cycle back, fill up the train car again.
Yes,
right?
train car or the semi truck, dump truck, whatever the case may be, but I'll call it bulk packaging. You buy it once, you clean it out, and then you use it over and over again. It's kind of like your circular economy, except for industry where you don't have that packaging. Food manufacturers and beverage manufacturers have a lot of cans coming in on pallets with slip sheets, plastic slip sheets. So they're layered. So you may have a can stack maybe 7 feet high, and in between every 12-inch layer, you have a slip sheet, a plastic slip sheet, to make sure that the cans don't fall all over the place. And so some of the plastic companies have said, hey, instead of us buying brand new slip sheets and putting them in every time, client, please put those slip sheets on a pallet. We'll pick it back up and then repurpose those back into a slip sheet and reuse it many, 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 many times. And it's a great way to use plastic, and they don't have to keep on using new resources.
Beautiful.
Hey, let's talk about a few facts. I've got a few facts I thought maybe folks would like to hear. And it's kind of crazy. Some of the things I'm going to tell you, you guys are going to shake your heads on. So for every ton of boxes, it takes 17 trees to produce that corrugate. So if I could reuse a ton of cardboard boxes, I would save 17 trees.
So can you, just to put things in perspective, do you have any sense of how quick it is to use a ton of cartons? Like,
yes, I do.
Okay.
So an average box for the consumer weighs about 2 pounds. That's 1,000 boxes. Okay. So if you got a package today, Mara, you used one of 2,000 boxes. So if there was 2,000 consumers that all got one box, they used 1 ton of cardboard. If you got 2 packages, we only need 500 people. If somebody got 4 packages, you need even less.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't take a whole lot. Now, Amazon is sending packages 1 or 2 to pretty much every freaking person in the country. Right? So there's a lot of corrugate going out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we're turning into, instead of going to the store and buying whatever we want to buy, and my wife does this all the time. I get a package every other day because she doesn't want to go to the store. She gets online, and here comes a box of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not very much, is what I'm trying to say.
Is corrugate also used to make corrugate?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, that's something. We need more of that, right?
So if you look at this picture closely, it's actually a Frito Lay box, okay? And if you look at the box, there's a bunch of stickers on there.
Mm-hmm.
So this box on the bottom has been used at least 7-8 times, because each one of those stickers is a new sticker that goes on that says, this is what's in this box. So every time they bring the box back to the plant and they put a different product, they put a new sticker on it. The top box is a brand new box that hasn't been used yet. On average, Frito uses their boxes about 8 times. The same box runs over and over till it can't hold the product anymore. And that's when they start recycling.
Okay, that's good news.
Recycling paper, it takes 1 tree to produce 17 reams of office paper. So all the people that are printing all their documents, you might want to think about that a little bit. I don't print almost anything off my computer. I just don't do it. If I have a soft file, I'll go back to that soft file. A typical office person will produce 1.5 pounds of waste paper. So that's probably somewhere around a half a ream of paper, give or take. It seems a little high, but I think it's accurate on average. So you may not use as much, I may not use as much, but somebody else is using 3x. So we need to really consider how much paper we are using as printers, how much we're printing off of the printers at the moment.
Yes.
Aluminum is a great item to recycle because if you take an aluminum can and recycle it, you'll save about 95% of the energy it takes to produce one from its ore content from bauxite. You save 95% of the energy from going from raw material into aluminum can by just recycling that same aluminum can. And one can run a TV for about 3 hours. Or it's the same thing as saying half a gallon of gasoline. That's the energy equivalence of a can.
That's amazing, because right now, if you think about it, gasoline where I am is over $3 a gallon. So you're saying one can has a value, energy-wise, of about $1.50.
Yeah, it really does.
Wow.
I see you shaking your head going, wow.
Yeah,
it is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling how much energy we're using in some of the packaging that we have.
Yes.
Last item I have for you is a recycling bottle. Just 5 PET bottles yield enough fiber to take to convert into one large T-shirt or a square foot of carpet.
Wow.
Recycling a single pound of PET bottle saves about 12,000 BTUs of energy. That's a lot, because you got to remember PET comes from oil. It's resin, so it burns really, really hot, and it takes a lot of energy to make the PET bottle. So we've got to figure out a way to either not use PET bottles for single use, use bottles that we can. When I travel, I usually take a bottle with me, and I go to the water fountain, I fill it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't want to be the person that's throwing away 5 bottles a day because I just want to have a single use.
And if you have a water bottle with a filter, which you'll find out about also on the summit, then you can actually drink water from any spigot too, anywhere safely.
That
right?
would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that's it from.
Okay, so stop sharing your screen. That was
And we're back.
We're back. And that was really eye-opening, Reggie. And actually, you know, you and I have had a couple conversations about waste, and I just want to talk about the waste that, like, we might feel noble when we're putting stuff in recycling. Now that you've educated us, perhaps a little less noble, and perhaps we recognize that there's a behavior change needed. But the thing that I think people aren't aware of is the waste behind the waste. And what I mean by that is some of the waste that's in the manufacturing process itself. So when we're buying chips, for instance, and the chips are in bags, there's a ton of waste from the bags and the chips behind the scenes that we don't have any control over directly at all, right?
That's correct. So when you're buying, let's say, cookies, there's probably 10 to 20% waste that's being generated. So if a plant made 1 million pounds of cookies, 200,000 pounds would also be generated as waste product. Chips, depending on what chip company you're talking about, that could be 10% or it could be even 5% from that 1 million pounds that's being produced. So bread, on the other hand, there's even more waste produced.
And this is waste, food waste, and other materials waste as well, right?
Mostly food waste, mostly food waste. So when you go into making dough for bread, there's a lot of dough that doesn't get produced into bread. And also when you're making, let's say, breadcrumbs, or you're making croutons, a lot of that material doesn't get in the bag because it was burnt, didn't get cooked enough, isn't the right shape. So when you get the perfect chip, there was other chips that were made that weren't perfect. So in the food manufacturing arena, I would say anywhere from 10 to 25% of food is made that's going to go to waste.
And on your waste proportions, food waste was second. So this is part of that food waste too, right? The food scraps waste.
So it should be part of that. Yes, yes.
So another wonderful business opportunity for folks that are listening is ways to convert food waste to energy, biogas digesters, all kinds of other opportunities to utilize and transform this food waste, and also to minimize food waste.
I think, to me, we have to minimize that food waste. We have to have the processes within a manufacturing facility to say 20% food waste is not acceptable.
Absolutely not.
Maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 1%, but 20%, 25% food waste doesn't add up.
No, not with people starving.
No, millions and millions of people starving in the US and all around the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is a worldwide problem. This is not a US problem. This is a worldwide problem.
And so do you have any insight, like how have you helped to minimize food waste in manufacturing processes, for example?
So we've done several things. It's always about the process improvement. So we've seen places where the knives aren't sharp enough when they're cutting something. It could be as simple as that. And so therefore, when the cut is made, let's say it's on a bread, okay, and the cut's made on the dough, but there's some dough hanging because the knife didn't cut all the way through. And now you've got a glob of dough that's getting wasted, okay? Or it could be on a slicer on a potato because the potato didn't get sliced properly and a third of the potato is now going into a waste stream.
Wow.
So some of the things that we see out there is efficiencies within the manufacturing process. And you have to have a keen eye and you have to have the background to understand how materials are produced, how things are manufactured. And that's something we add value as a company. Is we go into manufacturing places and say, why do you have this set at 0.5 instead of 0.6 or 0.4? Wouldn't it be better at 0.4 because you're going to get a better angle of the slice, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the facilities themselves.
So Reggie, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that's a challenge. And that really is a big challenge because people are used to doing things a certain way. You know, you may have a guy or a gal that's making bagels, and they've made bagels in New York for 25 years. This is all, and the response, sometimes I could go to them and say, hey, how about we change your process a little bit and do this? And the response I get is, we've been doing this for 25 years. This is the way my dad did it. This is the way my family's done it. Why would I change?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest challenge in my business model is, how do I get large corporations to look at processes in a different way and to change based on the fact that it may be better, or at least try to see if it's better before saying, no, that's the way I've done it for 30 years. I can't change.
Well, that's where the financial incentive helps, right?
That's correct. That's correct. So usually you have to come back with, well, it's worth $100,000 to you if we do it this way.
Then they listen.
Then they listen. Exactly. So
Right.
I always start with the financial aspect first and say, hey, I've got an idea for you. If you do this, we think we can make you $100,000 or $500,000 or whatever that number is.
Yeah. And then you've got their attention.
That's right.
Yeah. So how do you change a paradigm? Find a way to make it make money.
That's right. That's exactly right. People aren't going to change unless it makes them money.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's changing too, but we do have to deal with what is right now as well.
That's right.
So Reggie, this has been great. Is there anything you want to share to wrap up?
I would say that we as consumers
Thank you.
have to hold our companies accountable, our municipalities accountable, and each other accountable to do the right thing. Because sometimes doing the right thing is not easy, right? Change is not easy. People don't wake up in the morning saying, oh, what can I change today? That's not normal.
That's a great way to wake up every day. I mean, that would be a wonderfully inspiring thing for people to take on as a challenge.
Mm-hmm. It would. So
Yeah.
I would challenge all of us to go back and say, how can we change what we're doing today?
For the better.
For the better. Yeah, definitely for the better, not for the worse. How can we hold other people accountable? How can we hold ourselves accountable? And then go back to our city officials, go back to our manufacturing plants, our companies that are making sodas and cookies and whatever we eat, and hold them accountable and say, hey, I'm not going to buy your product if you are not at zero landfill, or I'm not going to buy your product if you have a bad note on sustainability, or you have a bad sustainability index for your company. We as consumers can hold companies accountable with our wallets.
And there's really power to petitions too. I mean, take action, start petitions, communicate with your suppliers. If you have a company you like doing business with and you don't like some of their practices, communicate with them, start a petition, start a campaign for people to get on board and influence them, because again, they're influenced by their bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
Wonderful.
I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, Reggie, it's been a delight. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Keep the momentum going by checking out all the other experts. Every one of them has invaluable information that you can't afford to miss. Buy the Premium Summit package now. Join the global conversation in our Facebook group and take action in your home, community, or the world at large. Together, we will shape a world that works.